Hi everyone, Queeveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we are going to quickly review what some of the planets are doing in April now that we're getting a little bit closer to it, and we're also going to discuss a phenomenon known as Earthshine. So here is the sun setting into the west now for the 18th. And there is the moon. We're just past the new moon. The new moon was on the 17th. So here is the moon just after coming around the sun. It's going to be an incredibly narrow crescent. There it is. So we're only seeing a tiny amount of the moon illuminated by the sun. The rest of the moon that we're seeing here is illuminated by us. It's illuminated by the Earth. So if anything, it looks a little bit darker here due to the lack of the atmosphere. The atmosphere would cause it to appear to brighten, but really the only way that we can see these parts of the moon while the moon is in this position is because of light reflecting off of the Earth. Now that is going to be a little bit tricky to see on the 18th unless you have a very clear flat horizon. So we're going to get rid of our horizon, go with our zero horizon so that there are no trees or buildings in the way. And as you can see, the moon has loads of space here to continue setting, and of course the sky gets much darker, and there is the other side of the moon. There it is. The light side of the moon, the near side of the moon, is in night time. The opposite side of the moon is being illuminated by the sun, but we can still see this part of the moon, often with enough detail to see the Sea of Tranquility, the football player on the moon. I did mention a hare or a rabbit on the moon in a previous video. It would look pretty upside down here, but we can see these details thanks to the moon being illuminated by the Earth, by the light of the Earth. The same way that we see light coming from the moon and it's really sunlight, light from the Earth reflects off the Earth and illuminates the moon. So I think this is a pretty important thing. There's the moon just going past the Pleiades. Of course, there will be a occultation or a conjunction of the moon and the Pleiades, but it's not visible from here in Ireland. You can see as we move back, the moon and the Pleiades get closer together and the Pleiades disappear because the sun is too bright. But even here, my orbits are still on from the previous video. If you didn't catch the previous video, we talked about Lagrangian points and where the James Webb Space Telescope is in space, but we don't need the orbits right now. So let's get rid of all of those. There's quite a lot of them, and we'll take a closer look at the moon. 7.9% illuminated, and we're still getting a pretty good view of the other side of the moon. Only a small part of the moon is illuminated, so the little bit of reflected Earthlight that is falling on the moon here, of course it's not as bright as direct sunlight, but it's not really being outshone by the illuminated side as it will be. So here we go. Now there's so much light getting reflected off the moon that the dark part of the moon, which we call the near side of the moon, sometimes the light side of the moon, that part of the moon that is in nighttime is now completely invisible. The Earthshine isn't enough for us to see it. The light reflected off the moon from the sun is too bright, it's overwhelming it. But as we move back to a smaller phase where less of the moon is illuminated by the sun, we can see a lot more of the Earth's reflected sunlight here. So only 2.7% of the moon is illuminated by the sun. The vast majority of the illumination we're seeing here is actually light reflected off the Earth. So people sometimes ask how we can see the moon so bright in space if it's not producing its own light. If the only light we see coming from the moon is light from the sun, how does it look so bright? What about the Earth? Where is the Earth's reflected light going? Well, it's shining out into space. It very rarely illuminates anything except for the moon with this phenomenon called Earthshine. So that's one way that we can see not only is the moon reflecting light from the sun, but we are also reflecting light from the sun. We can see around here the moon gets pretty close to Venus and Uranus, and as we move a little into the future we can see Venus and Uranus making a very close conjunction there on the 23rd. But a lot of the close conjunctions that we're going to be seeing at this time of the year are visible in the morning time and only from lower latitudes. There is another, if we move a little further forward, here we go on the 22nd, just around the close conjunction of Venus and Uranus on the 23rd. Here on the 22nd, we can see the moon and Jupiter being very close together. The moon passes just over Jupiter, so unfortunately we can't really use this as a way of showing the moon's motion across the sky, it's not going to move that much in the time that it's up. So it's not as useful as this conjunction has been in the past for showing the motion of the moon. But we can see the moon there, the half moon, nearly the half moon, 37.4%, not quite the half moon, but almost a half moon, pretty close to Jupiter there in the sky. So it's not a particularly close conjunction, not as close as Venus and Uranus, but also visible to us here in the northern hemisphere, visible from pretty much anywhere, unlike what we're seeing in the morning. We just got a quick glimpse there. So we'll move forward until the sun is above the horizon and we'll get rid of the atmosphere. So I did mention this conjunction in a previous video, but just to review it, because there are so many things out here. This comet 141P D Machaults, that is a comet that we're going to take a look at in a future video because I didn't mention it, unlike the other comets like 2025 R3 Pan-STARRS and another comet in a previous video. But we can see that we've got several planets here very close together and they're moving past each other over the course of the month. So here they are on the 17th, on the 18th, and then sliding past each other, really looking good on the 20th, and then continuing to move away from each other as we move later into the month. Mercury is in retrograde there, falling back towards the sun. Saturn and Neptune are continuing their orbit around the sun, moving in the direction that we'd expect. So is Mars, but because Mars is almost on the far side of the sun to us, it is still moving away from us. It's in its own orbit, and it's going to take a while for us to sort of catch up as we also move around the sun in that direction. There's also the planet Neptune, so we can see Mars and Neptune there making a really, really close conjunction back on the 13th. We can see that comet 141P Machaults also making a very, very close pass with Mars there. Doesn't look like Stellarium's generating a tail for this comet at the moment, and it is still pretty far from the sun, so that does make sense. But we can see that making a very close approach to Mars just there, going right past it in the morning. That's on the 14th, so again, this will have happened. The comet is going to move past Saturn there on the 18th and continue in towards the sun, I believe. We will check that out in another video, but that comet is moving in towards the sun. All of these conjunctions, all of these things happening here, we can see if we move back even further, there's Mercury and Neptune reasonably close together on the 16th as well. All of these things are going to be visible from closer to the equator. So if you are at a lower latitude than we are here in Ireland, you're going to be in with a much better chance of seeing those planets sliding past each other. I often mention when things are not going to be visible from here in Ireland without showing what they look like when they are visible. We did take a look at this close conjunction in particular already, but we're going to take another look at it here. I want to see just how close to the equator you need to be to actually see these things in the sky. So we've moved about 20 degrees of latitude closer to the equator, and that seems to be enough. So there's Mars, Saturn and Mercury, and we can see them over a range of several days sliding past each other, even there on the 20th. So for the vast majority of people, I'm sure for a lot of people watching this video, this is going to be visible. Way up here in Ireland at 52 degrees north, there's not many people living up here. Of course, Ireland, England, we're fairly populated. The Nordic states, fair bit of population as well. Some of the bigger cities in Canada, a lot of the bigger cities in Canada are lower latitude than us here in Ireland, but all of the United States, all the rest of Europe, all of the most populated cities in the Far East, in India, they're all much closer to the equator than we are. So for the vast majority of people, this is going to look great, and so I think it's even more important that I show it off. It's not like this is something that's only going to be visible from close to the equator. This is going to be visible for the vast majority of the world, and it is a particularly nice conjunction to catch. This set of conjunctions, really, this series of conjunctions with these planets, Mercury, Saturn, Mars, Neptune is out there as well. Of course, very difficult to see with all of this light from the sun in the sky. There is a comet out there as well, but we'll talk about that one in the next video. Most importantly, I hope that you get to see the Earthshine just coming back here to a few days in the past. This will of course happen next month as well, but there's the moon. Same thing, very narrow crescent illuminated by the sun. The rest of the moon that we're seeing here is visible because of Earthshine. And this is an even easier phenomenon to see when you are closer to the equator. For us here in Ireland, the moon isn't going to be visible when it's this narrow in a good level of darkness. The sun will already be starting to come up. So this is a particularly easy phenomenon to catch if you're closer to the equator, but it is only visible when the moon is a very narrow crescent. It needs to be a very narrow crescent for Earthshine to be visible, otherwise the other light will overwhelm it. Of course, we're way down closer to the equator here, so there's Scorpius and Sagittarius, much higher from the ground than I'm used to seeing them here in Ireland. We'll come back to our location and you can see that happening. Let's move them over there and we'll return to Ireland. And there we go, significantly lower in the sky. So that is a little bit about Earthshine. I hope that you get a chance to catch it. It's coming up over the next few days. You just need to take a look at the sunset and look out for the moon, and you should be able to see parts of the moon illuminated by the Earth reflecting light rather than the sun's direct illumination. And I hope that you get a chance to see, of course, the planets. They also are visible due to reflected light. And Jupiter and the moon, that conjunction is going to be visible from pretty much everywhere, as well as Uranus and Venus. However, the other multi-conjunction, you're going to need to be closer to the equator for that one. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do like it. If you like this kind of content, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you would like to read some of this information, you can do so on my website, queevinscontent.ie. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you back here next time.